Is Taiwan next? With Bumblin Biden abandoning our allies in Afghanistan, many pundits are concerned that China sees a new opportunity to seize Taiwan. In this video, we're going to take a look at the content of those concerns. We're going to look at how Taiwan fits in with China's global economic aims. And we're going to see how scholars believe China's resurgent nationalism may indeed be the tipping point for renewed conflict in the Pacific. You're not going to want to miss this. Greetings everyone, Dr. Steve here with you. Great to be with you. As always, I am your daily fake news antidote. As each and every day, we provide patriotic analysis to help you to think better so you can feel better in these crazy and turbulent times. So if you haven't already done so, you know what to do. Make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. Before we begin, let's give a huge shout out to the sponsor of this video, and that's BioTrust, with their awesome immune system supporting product, Ageless Body. Ageless Body combines 5 of the world's best immune supporting powerhouses to boost your immune system, really like nothing else. And best of all, if you click on that link below right now, you're going to get Ageless Body at their lowest price ever, 51% off with free US shipping to boot. So don't wait, click on that link or go to agewithsteveturley.com. All right, gang, let's dive right in here as the geopolitical fallout from the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan continues to just ripple throughout the globe. Many pundits are now very concerned that China is indeed poised to invade and annex Taiwan. National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien has raised the alarm, stemming from a piece published in the Global Times, which O'Brien calls simply a CCP propaganda tool. And this piece that was published just the day after the fall of Kabul, it was a message to the DPP, the Democratic Progressive Party of Taiwan. They're the ruling party there. The piece basically says that the United States is abandoning their allies, the U.S. is a spent force, and the future of Taiwan is to be united with China. And there's nothing they can do about it. Here's how the article ends. Listen to this. Quote, "The DPP authorities need to keep a sober head, and the secessionist forces should reserve the ability to wake up from their dreams. For what happened in Afghanistan, they should perceive that once a war breaks out in the Straits, the island's defense will collapse in hours, and the U.S. military won't come to help. As a result, the DPP authorities will quickly surrender, while some high-level officials may flee by plane." In other words, now that the United States has demonstrably relinquished its role as the manager over the old geopolitical order, Taiwanese citizens had better realize that their future is with China. And here's the key, just like Afghanistan's future is with the Taliban. So many pundits and analysts agree this piece published by the editors of the Global Times, a Chinese mouthpiece, is about as blatant a threat you can get regarding a Chinese invasion of Taiwan. Even before the fall of Kabul, the New York Times ran a piece suggesting that now that Hong Kong has been effectively usurped under Beijing's rule, it's now Taiwan's turn. Again, if you don't know, technically speaking, according to China, Taiwan doesn't exist. It's not a sovereign nation state. It's a rogue separatist province that mainland China has never relinquished. And they've been very, very successful in getting the so-called international community to follow suit on that. Today, Taiwan's recognized by only 14 countries as a sovereign nation. And so China's military, its warplanes, its warships, they've been encircling the island with more and more frequency over the last few years. And even one top military officer in the Indo-Pacific region told a Senate hearing recently that he believed China would indeed invade Taiwan at some point in the next 6 years. And so it's no wonder that in the aftermath of the fall of Afghanistan, even CNN is admitting that China has set renewed sights on Taiwan and ending the separation once and for all. Now, we should know there are some who are very, very skeptical about that. Bloomberg ran a piece yesterday that argued that while China's having a wonderful time gloating over Biden's bumbling of Afghanistan, they're not ready for the risks that a full-out invasion of Taiwan would involve. Taiwan is heavily militarized. While not formally recognized by the international community, it's still, they at least have sympathy with Taiwan, particularly in terms of its democratic commitment. A full-out invasion of Taiwan would cause Western nations to impose massive sanctions, cut off commerce, and isolate China diplomatically, economically. But then again, the fall of Kabul represented the fact that maybe that international order doesn't exist anymore. With the advent of economies like we see with BRICS, we could easily see Russia, the Middle East, perhaps even India join together in a new formal anti-Western economic alliance that could easily repel any Western sanctions. Again, we'll have to see on that. But in the meantime, the annexation of Taiwan would be fully in line with both China's grand economic strategy on the one hand and their burgeoning nationalism on the other. In terms of economic strategy, I don't know how many of you are familiar with what's called China's Belt and Road Initiative, all right? But the Belt and Road Initiative, it's basically China's vision for a Beijing-centered political and economic world order. So at one level, the Belt and Road Initiative involves building railways across Eurasia, as well as buying up shipping ports around the world to build their own terminals. And this involves China's going to a lot of cash-strapped nations and giving them a boatload of money in exchange for building their own shipping ports. And as such, China's gained a major foothold in European and African shipping ports. And of course, the whole point of the Belt and Road Initiative is to develop such strong economic ties with all these countries so as to align their interests with the interests of China. So if you think about it, middle-class wages, they've been stagnant now for decades. What cheap Chinese import goods are doing is they're allowing populations with stagnant wages to live more comfortable and abundant lifestyles, since of course they can access the goods at such low prices. But as a result, China has become a de facto mercantile power over that population, with the leverage of always being able to yank those goods away by their own fiat. And this economic leverage is especially concerning given that China combines its defense and civilian industries so that international economic ties and interests inevitably involve militaristic ties and interests. It's therefore no coincidence that China's begun to expand its military presence abroad. So what the Belt and Road Initiative is doing is it's forming a new world order where all roads lead back to Beijing, economic roads as well as political roads. And that's, of course, what President Trump spent 4 years challenging. He oversaw full court press backlash against the Belt and Road Initiative in the form of renewed tariffs that were aimed at hurting the source of China's economic power, which is its exports on the one hand, and massive demonstration protests against China's political and judicial maneuvers in Hong Kong on the other. Now, of course, with Beijing Biden, those days are over. China gets whatever it wants from Sleepy Joe. And then in addition to the Belt and Road Initiative, you've got China's burgeoning nationalism happening as well. Scholars such as Howard French have documented how Chinese nationalism draws from a sense of restored civilizational greatness. Now, much of this nationalism began in the latter part of the 19th century, which was at the midpoints of a 100-year period when China was dominated by Western powers and then by Japan, which China now refers to as its century of humiliation, a period between 1839 and 1949. So it's a time when you're dealing with the so-called Second Opium War with the British Empire and the French Empire, followed by the Sino-French War, and then the Sino-Japanese War. It really was a tumultuous time for China. It's a time that China ceded mass amounts of territories to the Russian Empire and Hong Kong to the British Empire. It lost Taiwan. Now, in many respects, the heart of this new Chinese nationalism is a resurgence of Chinese identity characteristic of domestic and international conditions prior to that century of humiliation. In other words, China wants to restore both the control of trade relationships with its neighbors that it once dominated via the Belt and Road Initiative, and it wants to recover the territories lost to Western and Japanese imperialism. And so what scholars are noticing is that China's adopted of late something akin to the Monroe Doctrine in its surrounding oceans. If you recall, the Monroe Doctrine is a 19th century doctrine that said that the United States would not accept further colonization by European powers of countries in the Western Hemisphere. And this developed over the succeeding decade into the United States regarding the Americas as its exclusive sphere of interest. And this meant that the United States can intervene in neighboring countries on the one hand and prohibit the presence of other European nations in exercising significant influence in the region on the other. And so what China is seeking to do is basically emulate the United States 19th century policy of taking exclusive control of security in the Pacific, in the Western Pacific, in the Pacific realm, and pushing out any Western influence there. It's a very bold initiative on the part of China, and it's very much rooted in this resurgent nationalism. So now the $10,000 question is, with the United States humiliating withdrawal from Afghanistan, does that open up the geopolitical space for China to annex Taiwan? That's something that pundits are openly asking, and it's something the world is going to have to keep a very close eye on. Now, before you go, you will definitely want to check out my latest video. I just uploaded it. It's on Biden's imploding poll numbers. They're an absolute disaster, and many are asking, is this the end of Biden? You're not going to want to miss it. So make sure to click on the link, and I'll see you over there. God bless.